Good morning, saints of the Most High. The chief literature evangelists have left me alone, but I need to say that I really appreciate the opportunity that particular union has in terms of its relationship to literature ministry. The president, Pastor Akombwa, did not only serve as a literature evangelist, but served as a regional publishing director, as union. He has served to the extent that if Pastor Akombwa did not appoint a separate publishing director for Zambia Union, we would all be shocked. It pays when you have administrators that understand the literature ministry and support it to the fullest. Pastor Mulambo has not only been a man of the briefcase, but they both can explain even the policies of retirement for literature evangelists. Thank you, leaders, for your contribution to the literature ministry. It is very easy, Pastor, to work when you have such leaders working with you. Yesterday, Pastor Moesi took me back to where I'm staying at Irene Village with Elder Ntani. While going there, I noticed something that just affected me so much that the picture can't leave me. When I was raised up by my parents, violence was not part of what I grew up with. As a matter of fact, in my entire life, I have never fought with anybody physically. I grew up very innocent, so I don't like seeing violence. Pastor Moesi was the driver. We got to a junction. It was a cross junction. And all of a sudden, the lights as best as I saw, turned green for the other group to go. But somehow one guy drove a little bit faster to cut in. And this other guy, deliberately deciding to beat him, also drove fast. And then all of a sudden, they stopped. We were right behind them. And while in their cars, they began pointing at each other. Now, I asked Pastor, I said, what's going on? Because I knew what happened was some normal behavior. I mean, when you're driving, you can do such things. It was not totally abnormal. But after pointing fingers at each other, the lights are green. We're supposed to be moving. They stop the cars and they come out. And when they came out, and our car was right in front, I hate violence. And where I was, I began praying, Lord, please. And these are men, two responsible men, and they began pointing their fingers at each other's noses. And fortunately, the grace of the Lord took over, and they didn't fight. But I tell you the truth, I kind of, where I was, I trembled because God intended life to be peaceful. I wonder why saints lose their tempers so quickly over something trivial. Hopefully one would regard. It's like you are in your own car and the other one is there. For you to come out when cars are moving. This morning, I would like us to talk about avoiding a crash. Avoiding crashing. Avoiding crashing. But it is not on automobiles. It's about an area in life. May I invite you to turn with me to the book of 2 Kings 2 Kings, and we will read from the 4th chapter. 2 Kings from the 4th chapter. 2 Kings, the 4th chapter, has these words. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha. Who cried out? The wife, the spouse of somebody. Her cry was, your servant, my husband, is what? Is dead. And you know that he feared or he revered the Lord. The husband was a God-fearing man who had reverence for the Lord. But then she says, but now, he is what? His creditors is coming to take my 2 boys as his what? As his slaves. Elisha cried and said, what can I do to help you? Tell me, what do you have? The woman answered and said, your servant has what? Your servant has what? Nothing at all, except a little oil. Okay? This is the life of a leader, the life of a pastor, a literature evangelist, a church elder, one who found a wife, a God-fearing wife, and they began living together. But something interesting happened. The course of nature took place. The man died. But when he died, it was discovered that the first thing to survive him was not necessarily the wife, but it was his what? His debt. His what? His debt. His debt immediately survived him, and the wife was one of the survivors, and the 2 boys, and immediately he died. His creditors came and said, we want our payment. We want to be paid. Unfortunately, for this literature evangelist, for this church leader, he had very few assets that he left behind. So few his assets were that nothing could be sold to pay his debt. And so his creditors simply said, we are taking your boys until you find the money for us to pay. And so they took the boys, but as they were dragging the boys, the woman runs to the prophet and says, my boys are being dragged by the creditors. Please help me. It's at that time that we discover actually that this man had nothing actually at his house. He had no assets. He had nothing. He died leaving problems behind. Now, before I go into the subject, let me simply say this. Yesterday, we talked about managing your life, organizing your life for effectiveness, organizing your life for success in life. Of all the workers in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, literature evangelists handle money more than any other. Am I right? I think you agree. As a literature evangelist, I remember taking my books, You and Your Health, those were the books in those days that were selling very well and had good value in terms of price. I remember taking those books and going to a customer, and the customer will say, I don't have the sufficient money. Can I make a partial payment? And I would say yes, and they would pay a partial payment, and I would take the money, and then I would go again to collect. A literature evangelist handles money in the Seventh-day Adventist Church more than any other worker. We have changed policies so often to protect literature evangelists There was a time when we allowed books to be taken and simply say, take books, then you bring the money. We discovered that in the process of managing money, the literature evangelists did not manage it well, at least where I worked. So we changed the policy and says you can't take the books until you do what? You pay. I don't know where the situation is right now, but whatever the case is, a literature evangelist manages money more than any other worker in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This morning, I would like to share with you briefly how you can organize your life so that you don't die like that man in the story. You don't die or you don't become like that woman in the story. Let me prefix this with this statement. If you are not organized in your financial area of life, you are likely to have a hard time in all the other areas of life. I want you to catch that, believers. If you are not organized in your financial life as a church worker, you are likely to have a lot of bumps and accidents in your other areas of life, including, for those of you that have husbands or wives, money has been rated as number one or number two to communication as the cause of conflict or destabilization in homes. And so I want to share with you that what we are about to share, please, as much as is possible, let the Lord help you to organize your financial life. If you don't organize your financial life, leaders, I will not hide from you, your success will be limited. When I use the word your success will be limited, I'm being polite. I'm supposed to say you will crash at some point. Because money is part of what you manage, and you manage it so often and so frequently as a literature evangelist. Now, assuming you can give me the answer to this question, I will proceed. Are Christians immune from financial mismanagement? The story tells us about a son of a prophet. It's not about some heathen. Sometimes we in the Christian arena or community believe we can just kneel down and ask God to take care of us and neglect basic principles of managing our lives and think it will work okay. Unfortunately, you cannot read on someone's face on Sabbath about their financial life. Because when a person is dressed in a suit or dressed in a beautiful attire dress, they just look like everything is all right. But I want to tell you, beloved, if you want to save your life from stress that can kill you, manage your financial life. Do not die like did this man of God who left the wife to be the chief accountant to pay for all his debts. I would like to share with you a few principles that you can use in organizing yourself in the financial area so that you may be effective in your ministry. Principle number one, approach financial management comprehensively. Approach financial life comprehensively. What does that mean? I'll put on screen a few other areas that will show you that you have to work on your financial life in a comprehensive manner. In your life, as you manage yourself, you cannot afford to only know one thing, but you have to have knowledge at least in the following areas. Number one, how to manage cash. To be honest with you, cash is the hardest thing to manage. Because when you see cash, cash comes very slowly, but it leaves you very fast. One way to protect yourself from managing your cash poorly, don't handle cash. Simply, pardon me for being so basic. I know, don't regard it as an intellectual insult on you. But I'm just revising the basics of these things. Please, as a leader, have a bank account where your money is kept. Cash is not the best thing to be traveling with and walking about with. How you manage cash will, to a certain extent, help you either crash or not crash. Debt. When you find yourself in excess debt, you have no choice but to become a thief to survive. I have overstretched my statement, but I'll tell you the truth. A person who has excess debt is the first person or culprit to make a misstatement about finances. Because when you are in excess debt, you are looking for every penny you can find anywhere where you can find it, because you have excess debt. I'm talking about managing your life comprehensively. So you have to have knowledge on debt management. You have to have knowledge on savings. Again, we will talk about some of these areas, but you need to have a way of knowing how to save. How to save. For example, as a literature evangelist, I believe all the money that you are given by your customers should go to the bank direct. That sounds very simple, but I'm being honest. You are in business. You are just like any other business entity. When you are given a check, take it to the bank. Don't leave from check to cash to spending. Take it to the bank and organize your money from the bank. We'll talk about that a little more. Retirement. I don't know where we are, Pastor Faigao. I don't know where we are around the globe on the retirement plans for literature evangelists. But one of the things that I have repeatedly heard, when a literature evangelist who has been carrying a heavy bag one side, at some point they start feeling very much some backache or stuff like that. If you did not prepare for retirement, because at some point you will retire. If you don't prepare, you will be in trouble. I'm talking about managing comprehensively. Investments. Investments is just a way of maximizing the value of your money. You've got to know something about that area. Estate, particularly referring to having some kind of a home or having some kind of a comprehensive picture of what happens to your property when you die. The other area is insurance. You remember the car that you saw on the screen that had crashed? If you don't have insurance, you can suffer a catastrophic financial loss if you did not have insurance. And obviously, we could go on and on, but the point I have tried to make on point number one is you need, as a leader, to organize your total life in such a way that you are not just once, you need to have a clear picture of your life. Now, there is a saying that says, your weakest point, you are only as strong as is your weakest point. What that means is that if you know how to manage all the things in life, all these things, but then you neglect managing risk, for example, You neglect managing risk. As long as you have not equipped yourself on how to manage debt or how to manage risk, even though you are stronger in other areas of life, you are as weak as is your weakest point. I'll give you an example of how life works. South Africa is a very strong country economically. As long as the neighboring countries are weaker economically, South Africa cannot enjoy its fullest joy because somehow the weaker areas of the continent will neutralize your strongest, your strengths. Are you getting my point? In other words, you know, there are many times when we think if we become strong in one area, if we become this, we'll be okay. As long as there are areas where you are weak, you will be neutralized. In financial management, it does not pay for you to just know a narrow area of how to manage your life and neglect other areas. Because the weaker areas will determine how strong you are. The point being, please, manage your finances comprehensively. Principle number 2. Plan how you manage your finances. I could spend a lot and talk more about that, but let me put it this way. If you don't plan how you want to spend your money, you will still spend it, but you just will not know what takes your money away so quickly. As a person, I keep on re-emphasizing organizing yourself because that is at the heart of success in any ministry. This is December. December is a good month for you to write your financial plan. And I don't know how your income is, it's in sales, but you are to say, this is what I plan for my year. These are the goals I would like to accomplish in the year 2010. As an example of planning your financial life, for example, every year, take one thing that you will accomplish so that at the end of the year, you can say, I accomplished this. I'll give you an example. You can say, I have 20,000 rands as my debt. That's just an example. You can say, by the end of the year, I would like to reduce my debt to 0. And then you work your plan very carefully. When we go to the third principle, which is save for emergencies. Many people struggle to save. But what we all forget is we are actually masters at saving. Every one of you who is here is an accomplished person in saving money. But you know what we do? We go and we borrow something, and then we start what we call a payment what? A payment what? Plan. A payment plan is just like a saving plan. The only thing is you used the commodity before you paid for it. As an individual in your life, organize yourself so that you can save some money that you keep in your account for emergencies. If you can, the minimum amount you need to have in your account for savings as a measuring stick is at least 3 months worth of your salary. Did you get that, saints? 3 to 6 months worth of your salary is what should be in your savings. Why 3 months? The reason for 3 to 6 months is that is what it takes to find another job in the event you lose your job. If you find the job. Please, there are many people who would have led a healthy life in their in their day-to-day living who failed to because they did not manage the saving area of their financial life. The other and next area is that of principle number 4. Use credit wisely. Now, many people would almost say, don't use credit. I don't think that is necessary. Use of credit is not wrong, but unwise use of credit is wrong. I do not want to be traveling with cash in my pocket. Rather, if I can, I want to travel with a card that I can use to pay. If somebody steals it, at least they'll steal a card and I'll block it out. But when you use a credit wisely and you meet the payments at the end, you will be okay because you are managing it wisely. The unfortunate thing is many people count credit as an extension of their income. And then they start drawing from it to establish a lifestyle that is based on what is not theirs, but what has been allowed to be drawn. Use your credit wisely and you will be a successful person. The next principle number 5, do not pay for anything you are asked to pay. Negotiate. Negotiate is an example. But I'll tell you something. Don't take it for granted that every statement you get is correct. Many people will charge you for what is not correct because they are negligent. Many institutions, including banks, make mistakes. One time I went to my bank. I always encourage, please, when you get a bank statement, please don't put it aside. Read it line by line. I went to a bank and found that they had credited me. They had put money that was not mine to the amount of $5,000 was put on my account. So I went to a cashier. I said, this doesn't look like my money. And you know what she said to me? She said, well, we don't know where it came from. I said, you don't know where it came from, and yet I'm telling you it's not my money. To cut the long story short, I wrote them a letter. I said, this transaction is not my money. I hate to have money in my account that is not mine because I don't want to start enjoying a life that is not of my potential. I gave them 12 months. At the end of 12 months, they still came back and told me they didn't know where the money came from. But I'll tell you something. It came from somebody. Somebody lost 5,000. The point being, don't just take things and spend. You look at your expenses. Even in stores, there are many times when a tailor will calculate for you and give you, don't just accept it. Have an idea of, is this a correct entry? Sometimes you pick a commodity from the shelf that is written 4 rands, and yet in their machine it still shows 14 rands. It is your obligation to manage your area of finances. Principle number 6. As far as is possible by you, avoid, reduce, manage, or transfer your risk. Leaders, I am saying this because I know how life comes. Life doesn't always come easy. Today you are healthy, tomorrow you will be sick. And if you are sick tomorrow, if you don't have a good medical coverage, which transfers your bills from your responsibility to some other responsibility, you will find yourself being affected financially. If you can avoid any risk, avoid it. Reduce it. those of you that live in your own homes, when it rains heavily and you see a little dot or a little circle of rain on the ceiling board, you can reduce your cost by addressing it. It's maybe a question of just buying a little kind of material that you can put on top where they nailed the roof and it covers it. Or you can let it until your ceiling has rotten and you have to remove all of it. It's your responsibility to reduce, to avoid, and to do all that you have to do. Number 7, prevent, reduce, and control expenses. Prevent, reduce, and control expenses. It's interesting how you will find a person who has a very good yard. They have land around their house. They still buy vegetables. They go to buy vegetables. But they have land around their house. When we moved over to the US, I stopped enjoying the joy of having a garden because of the weather and also space. But when I went to England on a trip visiting, I was so amazed. I found a person with a garden that immediately challenged my mind. And so I began saying, I'm going to grow vegetables, and I'm going to, because you don't need a lot of space to grow vegetables. So I began growing my vegetables in a soil bag. You know, that's a soil bag that you buy at $2, and that is my pumpkin leaves. You know, having grown up in Zambia, you can't get rid of the pumpkin leaves. You see, I began putting the seeds. You draw things there, and you drop the seed there. You know what is interesting about this? When winter comes, I just drag those bags into the garage for temperature control. Leaders, the point I am making is, in life, learn to be industrious so that you can reduce on your expenses, because it is part of what God expects us to do. Now, let me come to the conclusion. In conclusion, when everything else fails, try what? Try simplicity. There are many of us who change lifestyles when we have extra income. I was drinking water. When I get more money, I start drinking juice. After I get more money, I stop drinking common juice. I start drinking bottled sparkling juice. When I have extra income, I get rid of my Toyota Corolla. I buy something a little bit more elegant. When I get a little bit, then I go. It is okay to improve yourself, but remember, life is not about chasing another higher life. Life is simple. The happiest people in life are people sometimes who have very little. When you have the basics of what it takes to live, be happy and rejoice, because that is the gift the Lord has given you, and with that gift, you can enjoy life. Simplicity can be a great gift in life. When I was working in Zambia Union, we received a missionary who came to work in Zambia. In those years, a Pajero in those years was just coming on the market in Zambia. And this missionary decided to buy. At that time, that was the most beautiful vehicle you could find on the road. Comfortable by all descriptions, able in its power. But you know what? When he bought that, the day he came into the country, he drove it brand new. He came to my house and he said to me, Pastor, I have a request to make. I said, what's the request? He says, can I park my car in your yard? You see, my yard had a wall fence, and he could not find anywhere else to park the car because it was an expensive car. So he came to me and says, can I park my car in your yard? I said, of course you can. But you know, I had a Toyota Corolla, and I'm not advocating for Toyota Corollas, but I had a Toyota Corolla which I parked in the parking garage. He said to me, Pastor, do you mind if I park my car next to yours in the closing garage? I said, the two cars won't fit. So I saw that he really wanted to protect his property. So I pulled out my Toyota Corolla because I knew I could afford to lose my Toyota Corolla. He could not afford to lose his Pajero. So we tried to pack the Pajero in, but you know, it's one of those very high ones, so it couldn't go in the garage. We almost tried to see if we could unscrew the things on top so that it could go in, but it failed. We finally gave up. So we parked it next to mine. I pushed back my Toyota Corolla. I was about to say, I'll see you tomorrow, when he said, Pastor, I have one more request. Can I sleep in your house? I realized the man was in trouble. Leaders, I'm talking about simplicity. When you are not simple, you bring around yourself so many complications. When you are simple, you can sleep anywhere without being worried. So you know what he did? I said to him, sir, come and sleep. But I have no extra room. You have to share with my brother. He says, I don't mind. So he came and we gave him a room with my brother. Unfortunately, the words of the Lord are true. Jesus said, put your wealth in heaven where thieves do not steal, and dust and rust do not affect those things. But you know what? As he had been driving through the city, strange people had noticed him. So when we went to bed, at 1 a.m., we were visited by 6 people. And they were armed with guns. Now, because I had nothing to protect, I was asleep. When the guard blew the whistle, when he saw the 6 men, the first one to hear the whistle was the missionary doctor. And you know what? He woke up and went straight to the door and opened the door. And at that time, those people were professionals. The Pajero was already on. He went to the window of the driver and grabbed the driver and began pulling the driver out. You know, simplicity is of God. Don't complicate your life so much that you lose freedom of living in this earth. Saints of the Most High, many of us would have done okay. You can be clean without being rich. You can be orderly without being rich. You don't have to have excess for you to manage your life. Simplicity is still a good style today. In most cases, when you are simple, your life will even be much easier. In life, the more complicated you become, the more expensive your life will be to manage. Before I pray, I would like to appeal to you. And leaders, I am sure you have heard. You can manage other areas of your life very well. be a successful salesperson. I beseech you this morning, manage your financial life well, and you will be a much happier and successful person in life. Please bow your heads with me for prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for who you are. You have demonstrated to us that you made us as human beings that can be organized. Finances are one area where many of us struggle and fail. Our prayer this morning, Heavenly Father, as the mighty army that you've established for us in literature work, is that you will organize us in such a way that even our financial lives will be organized well. Bless us, and may the presence of the Lord be with us for the rest of the day. In Jesus' name, amen. I will invite the other officers who are with me to now wrap up and close.